Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Sean Maher. I'm the Acting Communications and Engagement Director for the City of Oakland. We're going to hear statements from the City Administrator's Office, from the Oakland Police Department, and from the City's Department of Violence Prevention. When we're done with those statements, we will open it up to questions. Please raise your hand and we'll call on questions one at a time. Please identify the outlet that you're with, ask your question, and then we will respond. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce now City Administrator Justin Johnson.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Johnson, and I am the newly appointed City Administrator for the City of Oakland. I wanted to thank members of the media for coming. We're certainly here to acknowledge a number of unacceptable incidents of violence affecting our community today. We are here to also let the community know what we're doing to address these issues. I first want to acknowledge and express my deepest condolences to the families that have been impacted by the senseless violence that continues to plague our community. Reducing gun violence continues to be a top priority for Mayor Tyler's administration. We are taking steps to prevent programs that prevent violence, ensure accountability for those who commit these crimes, work with state, county, and community partners to address the proliferation of violence and guns in our streets. We've already returned foot patrols to many of our neighborhoods, and we will be adding more officers in the near future. We're also working to expand macro throughout the city, and doing so, and also we are doing a comprehensive review of our ceasefire strategy so we can make them as effective as possible in reducing gun violence. At the same time, our Department of Violence Prevention is working in close coordination with community organizations to break the cycle of violence. We know we need the partnership and support of community leaders who understand that this problem, that they can also help us reach and address the problem out to those who are most impacted by gun violence. I want to thank our partners from the Police Department as well as the Department of Violence Prevention for joining us to share more details about recent events and what we are doing to make Oakland safe. Sean.
Next up from the Oakland Police Department, Interim Chief Darren Allison.
All right, good afternoon. I want to begin by saying that any loss of life is tragic and traumatic experience for the family and friends of those involved, including the communities where these incidents happen. Sadly, in the span of 10 hours, the City of Oakland experienced 4 homicides, 2 of which occurred in one incident. At this time, we do not believe any of these incidents are connected. With the addition of these 4 lives lost, OPD has investigated 57 homicides this year, slightly down from this time last year when 64 lives were lost in the City of Oakland. At this time, I'd like to bring up our commander for the Criminal Investigations Division, Acting Deputy Chief Dave Elsey, to provide some information on the recent homicides.
Good evening, good afternoon. Like Chief Allison said, I'm Dave Elsey. I'm the Acting Deputy Chief of Bureau Investigation. Keep in mind that in this 10-hour stretch since this morning, or a little after 1 a.m., we've had these 3 shooting incidents involving 4 deaths. So the investigations are very, very active. Homicide investigators have been working around the clock all morning, so the details that I can provide is going to be limited just because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle put together yet. I will start a little before 1:30 a.m. this morning in the 1100 block of 89th Avenue. Officers responded to reports of 2 people inside a residence that appear to be suffering from gunshots. Officers arrive on scene and they do find 2 adults in this residence, and they were pronounced on scene, pronounced deceased by medical personnel that arrived. At this point, we're not releasing any names of the victims until next of kin can be notified. About 3 hours later, just before 5 a.m. in the 1200 block of 18th Avenue, officers on routine patrol saw a person laying in the street. They drive over to assess what's going on with this person, and they realize that it's a female that is laying in the street, and she's suffering from gunshot wounds. Medical personnel is summoned, and unfortunately, she's pronounced deceased at that time. Connected to that incident, we had a person, a male adult, arrive at a local hospital and reported with gunshot wounds. Officers were able to connect that individual to this incident here in the 1200 block of 18th Avenue. And again, trying to determine his exact role in the incident. We don't believe he's a suspect, but trying to determine what his involvement was. Those are some of the things that we are actively looking into. About 7 hours later, a little after 11 a.m., in the 2100 block of 106th Avenue, our dispatch center receives a call of a vehicle accident. Officers arrive on scene to investigate the vehicle accident. Upon contacting the sole occupant and the driver, they realize that he is suffering from gunshot wounds in the vehicle. The driver is a male adult, and at this point, we don't have any suspect information. This came in a little after 11 a.m., so those details we're still trying to figure out. And again, he was pronounced on scene, medical was summoned, and unfortunately, he did pass as well. And in all these cases, we are not releasing any names at this point. Thank you.
So I want to let everyone know that public safety is our top priority. And it's crucial to take proactive measures to address the rise in homicides and other gun-related incidents. We are taking a comprehensive and holistic approach to address the current crime trends. We are deploying our violent crime operations teams to engage in focused, intelligence-driven enforcement, working to identify and apprehend individuals harming our community. We're also using our Crime Gun Intelligence Center for firearm tracing and ballistics analysis. And although we've seen a number of personal disputes result in gun violence recently, we know that gang and group shootings still represent a majority of the violence in the city of Oakland. With that, we will leverage our ceasefire strategy and teams to focus enforcement on individuals associated with the most active gang or groups. We know that working with our community and our law enforcement stakeholders, the ceasefire strategy is effective at reducing gun violence. We will continue to partner with our Department of Violence Prevention, who engage in intervention strategies including violence interruption, life coaching, and mentoring. We're also working with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to include collaborations on investigations and enforcement. We maintain strong relationships through our local and federal task forces, including the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Task Force, our Drug Enforcement Administration Task Force, U.S. Marshal Service, and our U.S. Attorney's Office. I want everyone to know your Oakland police officers and police department staff are committed to public safety, conducting thorough preliminary and follow-up investigations, and are working to hold those who harm our community accountable. But we cannot do this by ourselves. We need our community members to assist, providing any information that can help solve these violent crimes. And we believe, continue to work together, we can work towards a safer Oakland. And I want to encourage anyone with information on any of these incidents or any other homicides to please reach out to our homicide section at 238-3821 and look for any updates provided through our social sites. Sean?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief.
We're also pleased to have with us from the Department of Violence Prevention, Chief Kentrell Killens.
Good afternoon. As was said, I am the interim chief of the Department of Violence Prevention. I'm a community member. So as we discuss incidents of violence, I would like to, as have been mentioned earlier, talk about the impacts that it has on us as a community as a whole. We grieve with the families, we grieve with the communities, and most importantly, we engage with those individuals but to potentially reduce any forms of retaliatory violence from all incidents of these violence. So we continue to lift our prayers up to the communities who are suffering and the individuals who are suffering from these incidents of violence. I just want to acknowledge, as intervention services, the Department of Violence Prevention has responded to all of the incidents of violence that have taken place over the last 24 hours. I want to make it clear that our goal is to provide families that are most impacted and the most vulnerable the opportunity to mitigate some of the crisis and to reduce some of the trauma associated with the events that they're encountering with them and their families. We show up at the scenes as city staff to make sure that, one, as city government, we're present in the time of the loss of somebody else's family member, with the concern, with the care, with the compassion, but also with the services, and to alleviate the gaps in between those connection to services. So in the moments of 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, we're available to families to provide linkages to those resources and make sure that connections are made with individuals that are present. The Department of Violence Prevention shows up to reduce, to provide reduction efforts as we support families of all shootings and homicide incidents. Some of the services include funeral assistance, counseling services available to both individuals and family members, and most importantly, the connection to the victim of crime assistance. The next phase is the community engagement, and the community engagement, which is our form of building the assessment around what levels of violence are present, what levels of retaliation are possible as a result of these incidents that we're responding to. And only those who are closest to the problem can actually answer those questions. Families that are impacted by the situations, individuals, peers, and community members that are connected to those situations have those answers for us. And we also want to make sure that healing services are available as individuals are dealing with immediate grief and trauma. And so we want to provide, again, that connection to those celebrations of life, those memorials, those immediate grief and trauma circles that the families so desperately need in these moments of crisis. In response to the incidents of violence over the last 24 hours, the Department of Violence Prevention and our CBO partners, our community-based partners, Youth Alive, and their violence interruptions team, we showed up to the scene on 98th Avenue. Our community crisis responders are present at the time of this incident with community members. Youth Alive has the violence interruption team in connection to our wraparound services that are also present. Our purpose is to assess the needs of the family members that are present at the scene to get a gauge of the level of retaliation and begin the conversation around services. Our community engagement and safety assessments are to determine the concerns that may be present among family members, among residents, and among community members. And it's also our way of gauging, again, the potential for retaliation and the avenues in which it might come. So as we focused on the incidents on 18th Avenue, the Department of Violence Prevention's crisis responders and Youth Alive's lead violence interrupter responded to support community and make sure that there was information available for those who were present at the scene. Youth Alive's violence interrupters and caught in the crossfire intervention specialists are also responding to Highland Hospital to the second victim of that incident as we're looking to see if a referral is made to make a connection to services for the second victim. On the incident of the 2100 block of 106th Avenue, our DVP community crisis responders and our violence interrupters were not brought into this incident until this afternoon. And so at this very moment, we actually have individuals who are on the ground present with families engaging, figuring out what level of support we can provide, accessing information that'll help us connect to the proper next of kin, and then lead the conversations that will help the next steps of the services. A lot of people assume that as we show up to incidents of violence, that the work is done at the yellow tape. For our work is when the work begins, because there's several conversations that have to happen with family members and community members in the following up process. Assessing levels of retaliation is not a one-off conversation. It is a continuum of conversations. It is a continuum of conversations with the most impacted individuals so that there is a thorough examination of what's possible and who we need to connect to in order to disrupt the patterns of violence. Our goal is to keep a pulse on the incidents, the nature of the incidents, find out as much information that we can in terms of connecting to the right folks involved in the situation. Our goal is also to maintain the connection with the family and community members to ensure that that direct link to services have been made and that access to services have been made through the entities that are available through the City of Oakland and our community-based organizations. Lastly, we want to continue all efforts towards reducing trauma associated to each incident of violence within the City of Oakland. And we will continue to be a strong partner within the work. We will continue to be very much present at the time of trauma and making ourselves available as a resource to community as they desperately need it in the times of incidents of violence, such as homicides and shootings like this. So thank you for your time, for your presence, and most importantly, for your care for this community.
Thank you, Chief Killings. We'll take questions now. Again, please raise your hand. We'll call on folks one at a time. Please let us know what outlet you're from and ask your question.
Darwin with the Oakland side for Chief Allison. The ceasefire, I know the ceasefire unit staffing dropped quite a bit in like 2019, 2020, 2021. That's like OPD's most successful initiative for reducing gun violence, right? Is that unit staffed back up? I forget the exact numbers, but when I heard a while ago, it seemed like a number of officers had left that unit. What's the staffing levels of ceasefire now? Is it adequately staffed to do this kind of work?
Thank you for the question. So our ceasefire teams are made up of essentially 4 squads. A squad of officers could be a sergeant and 8 officers. When we funded and budgeted for the department, none of the ceasefire positions were cut. They were all maintained and fully funded. Obviously, with our department, not only do we maintain staff vacancies through normal vacancies, we also maintain staff vacancies through extended leave. So all of our units throughout the department, because of long-term leaves, have some level of vacancies. Currently, right now, our ceasefire teams are staffed up to 3 squads. We've been running short, as we have been in our Criminal Investigations Division and our Violent Crimes Operations Center, due to some of the extended vacancies that we see in the department. But as we bring more officers back, as we graduate more officers from the academy, we are going to certainly prioritize those teams that are focused on violent crimes and violence enforcement. We currently have the 192nd Academy in process right now with 28 recruits, which will be essential to being able to fill those open positions.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Darwin. You, sir.
King Cuthbert, SF Chronicle. Commander LD, would you just spell your first and last name, please?
First name, David, D-A-V-I-D. Last is L-Z, E-L, Z like zebra, E-Y.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate your help getting this information out to the community, and we thank you for being here.